Hello, and welcome to the English Learning Podcast. This is the place where we help you become a more confident and fluent English speaker. I'm your host, Jason, and today we have an exciting topic that's perfect for beginners or anyone looking to improve their speaking skills. We'll be talking about how to think smart and speak fluent English, a key combination that can make a huge difference in your language learning journey.
And I'm Sarah. Yes, that's right. Today's episode is all about thinking smart when learning English and how that can help you speak more fluently. Whether you've just started learning or you've been studying for a while, we're going to share some practical tips and strategies to help you speak with more confidence and clarity. We'll keep it simple and fun. So let's get started.
Exactly, Sarah. Whether you're in a classroom or learning on your own, we've all faced the challenge of trying to speak English like a native. But the truth is, it's not just about memorizing words or grammar rules. It's about how you think about the language. Once you start thinking in English and practicing the right habits, everything starts to click into place.
That's right, and we're going to make sure you understand how to develop those habits. So if you're ready to get started, grab a pen and paper, or just sit back and listen, we've got some great tips ahead.
All right, before we jump into today's main topic, let's have a little fun with an icebreaker. Sarah, I have a question for you. When you first started learning English, what was the hardest part for you? I mean, everyone has that one thing that trips them up. What was yours?
Great question. For me, it was definitely speaking without translating everything in my head. I'd always think in my native language first and then try to translate it into English. But, the words wouldn't always come out the way I wanted. Does that ever happen to you, Jason?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a common challenge for a lot of learners. For me, it was definitely remembering the right words at the right time. Sometimes I'd get stuck in conversations and would have to pause just to find a simple word. It made me feel a little nervous, honestly.
Yes, I get that. It's like you know the word, but when it's time to speak, it just doesn't come to you. It's frustrating. But over time, I learned that it's okay to pause and think, and most people understand. And here's the thing. The more you practice speaking, the more natural it becomes.
Exactly. And for our listeners, don't worry if you feel this way too. It happens to everyone. The trick is to keep practicing. Even if you make mistakes or can't think of the perfect word, don't let it stop you from speaking. The more you speak, the more confident you'll get, and soon you'll realize it's easier to find the right words.
Right. And you know what I learned? If you just focus on getting your message across, not on being perfect, it actually makes speaking a lot easier. The goal is to communicate, not to speak without errors. That's a huge mindset shift.
That's a great point, Sarah. And to everyone listening right now, take a deep breath. English learning isn't a race. It's a journey, and we're here to guide you through it.
So, Jason, here's a fun idea. Let's challenge ourselves a little. How about we do a mini role play? You and I will pretend we're having a conversation in English, and we'll do it without thinking about perfect grammar or perfect vocabulary. Just focus on the conversation and having fun with it.
That sounds like a fun way to practice. All right, let's go for it. So, Sarah, I'll be the person asking you for directions to a coffee shop. Ready?
Yes, let's do it.
All right, now that we've had some fun with our icebreaker, let's get into the heart of today's episode. How to think smart and speak fluent English. Let's start with thinking smart. Sarah, when you hear that, what comes to your mind in terms of learning English?
Great question, Jason. For me, thinking smart about English means changing the way we approach the language. Instead of focusing on memorizing every word or rule, we need to focus on understanding the language and how it fits into real-life situations. One of the biggest things I learned was to think in English, not translate from my native language.
Absolutely. When you try to translate from your language to English, it can slow you down and make things more complicated. Instead, try to immerse yourself in English thinking. For example, when you're at home or out on a walk, try to think about what you see and hear in English. Like, if you see a dog walking by, just say to yourself, "There's a dog. It's walking fast." It may sound simple, but the more you practice thinking like this, the more natural speaking in English will become.
Exactly. And this is something I struggled with at first, too. But once I made it a habit to think in English, even for simple things, my ability to speak fluently started improving. It's also about understanding the context of what you're learning, not just memorizing words. For example, if you're learning how to order food at a restaurant, don't just memorize the phrases. Think about the situation. You're at a restaurant and you want to ask for a menu or order a drink. Understanding the context helps you choose the right words.
Right. Context is everything. So, rather than focusing too much on individual words, try to focus on the situation you're in and the goal of the conversation. Another smart way to think about learning English is by focusing on patterns in the language. For example, English has many common sentence structures. By practicing those structures, you can say more without having to think too hard about the grammar.
Exactly. If you can get familiar with a few basic sentence patterns, like subject, verb, object, or using can for ability, you can start building more complex sentences without much effort. And Jason, let's not forget about learning chunks of language, not just individual words. For instance, instead of memorizing a single word like delicious, memorize the phrase, "This food is delicious." That way, you're not just learning one word, you're learning how to use it in a sentence.
Now, let's move on to the second part of today's topic: how to practice speaking more fluently. Sarah, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when it comes to speaking fluently?
One of the most important things I learned is that speaking fluently isn't about being perfect. It's about being confident and getting your message across. If you wait until you're perfect, you'll never speak. I think that's the biggest mistake I made early on.
I couldn't agree more. It's so easy to focus on grammar or vocabulary, but fluency comes when you practice speaking regularly. The more you speak, the easier it becomes to express your thoughts. And you don't need to wait for the perfect moment to start. Even if you're making mistakes, just keep going.
Right. Mistakes are part of the process. And here's another tip. Don't be afraid to imitate. Try to mimic the way native speakers talk, whether it's through podcasts, YouTube videos, or even movies. Pay attention to how they pronounce words, the rhythm of their speech, and their tone. Imitating helps you build muscle memory, which will make speaking feel more natural.
That's such a great point, Sarah. Imitation is one of the best ways to improve speaking skills. Another tip I'd add is to practice speaking out loud every day. It doesn't matter if you're speaking to someone or just talking to yourself. The goal is to get used to producing English sounds, which will make you more comfortable when you're speaking with others.
Yes, and don't forget about using language apps or finding speaking partners. Apps like HelloTalk or Tandem let you practice with real people, and that's one of the best ways to improve. You'll get real-time feedback and learn how native speakers respond in different situations.
That's true, Sarah. And remember, it's important to practice with someone who is patient and supportive. Speaking with people who encourage you, even when you make mistakes, will help you gain confidence and keep you motivated.
Exactly. And for beginners, it's okay if you don't speak quickly or perfectly. Start by speaking slowly and clearly. Fluency comes with time, and the more you practice, the more natural it will feel. Recap of key points. Think in English instead of translating. Focus on context and patterns in language. Practice speaking regularly, even if you make mistakes. Use imitation as a technique for natural speaking. Practice with language apps or speaking partners.
All right, now that we've covered the theory and discussed how to think smart and speak fluently, let's get into some actionable tips you can start using today to improve your English skills. These are simple but effective exercises that will help you put what we've talked about into practice.
That's right. The key is to practice every day, even if it's just for a few minutes. The more you practice, the faster you'll improve. So let's go through some easy and practical exercises that will help you think and speak in English more confidently.
Our first tip is to speak to yourself in English. I know this might sound a little strange at first, but it's really helpful. Try describing your day or your surroundings in English. For example, if you're at home, say to yourself, I am sitting in my room. I see a book on the table. I feel happy today. The more you practice talking to yourself in English, the more comfortable you'll get with speaking the language.
Exactly. It's a great way to get used to forming sentences and thinking in English. You don't need to worry about making mistakes because you're just practicing. And remember, the goal is to speak regularly, not to be perfect.
Next up is an exercise called shadowing. This means listening to a native speaker and repeating what they say exactly how they say it. You can find videos or podcasts with transcripts and listen to them while you try to imitate the speaker's rhythm, pronunciation, and intonation.
Shadowing is a fantastic way to improve your speaking skills. It helps you get used to the natural flow of the language, and it's also really good for improving your accent. You can start with short sentences or phrases and slowly build up to longer conversations.
Yes, and even if you don't understand everything at first, don't worry. Just focus on repeating what you hear. Over time, you'll begin to pick up more and more words and sounds. You can also practice shadowing with movies or TV shows that you enjoy. Just make sure to use subtitles if you need them.
Tip number 3 is simple but effective. Listen and repeat. Find an English podcast or a YouTube video and listen carefully to a short segment. Then, pause and repeat what you heard, trying to match the speaker's pronunciation and tone. You can start with a sentence or a short paragraph. The more you repeat, the more fluent you'll become.
Exactly. This exercise helps with your listening skills as well as your speaking. By repeating after the speaker, you also train your brain to recognize words and phrases faster. Try to do this with different accents and speaking speeds to challenge yourself. Our fourth tip is to record yourself speaking in English. It may feel a little awkward at first, but recording yourself gives you the chance to listen back and catch any mistakes you might not have noticed while speaking. You can record short conversations, read aloud from a book, or talk about your day.
That's a great tip, Jason. When you listen to your recordings, pay attention to your pronunciation, the rhythm of your speech, and if you're using the right words in context. This will help you track your progress and notice areas where you can improve.
And remember, don't be too hard on yourself. The goal is to improve little by little. When you listen to your recordings, try to focus on what you did well and celebrate those small victories.
Last but not least, try using language apps. There are plenty of apps like HelloTalk, Tandem, or Duolingo that can help you practice speaking, listening, and writing in English. These apps offer speaking partners, quizzes, and fun activities that keep you engaged while learning.
Apps are great because they provide immediate feedback. You can connect with native speakers and practice speaking in real-world situations. Plus, they're perfect for learning on the go, whether you're commuting or waiting for an appointment. 1. Speak to yourself in English every day to practice forming sentences. 2. Use the shadowing technique. Imitate native speakers. 3. Listen and repeat what you hear in English podcasts or videos. 4. Record yourself speaking and review your progress. 5. Use language apps to practice with real speaking partners.
These tips are super simple, but they can make a huge difference in your fluency. The most important thing is to practice consistently. Even if it's just for a few minutes every day, regular practice will help you improve faster.
Exactly. And remember, language learning is a journey, not a race. The more you practice, the more natural it will feel. Keep challenging yourself, and soon you'll notice your speaking confidence grow. All right, everyone, we've covered a lot today, from learning how to think smart about English to practical tips on how to speak fluently. I hope you're feeling inspired to start practicing some of these strategies. Remember, fluency doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, patience, and consistent effort.
That's right, Jason. And don't forget, it's not about being perfect. The more you practice, the more comfortable and confident you'll become. So, whether it's speaking to yourself in English, using language apps, or imitating native speakers, make sure to practice every day, even if it's just for a few minutes.
Exactly, Sarah. And if you're feeling unsure, don't worry. You're not alone. Every learner goes through the same challenges, and the most important thing is that you keep moving forward. Stay patient with yourself and celebrate those small victories along the way.
Absolutely. And if you're looking for more tips and resources to help you along your English learning journey, be sure to check out the other episodes in our English Learning Podcast playlist. We've got more great content coming your way.
Thanks so much for joining us today. We hope you found today's episode helpful. If you did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the podcast with your friends who are also learning English. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to leave a comment or reach out to us.
Keep practicing, stay positive, and remember, you've got this. See you in the next episode.
Take care, everyone, and happy learning. Thank you again for tuning in to the English Learning Podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you found the tips helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you next time with more language learning tips. Until then, keep practicing and stay confident. Goodbye, and take care.